Collision course. Dahlia Novak drummed her fingers on the sleek conference table, watching as her colleagues nodded along to whatever Julian Westbrook was saying. The man had a presence that commanded attention, tall with sharp features and penetrating hazel eyes that seemed to catch every detail, every flaw. His custom suits probably cost more than her monthly rent, and he wore them with the casual confidence of someone who had never worried about money. "So you see," Julian continued, gesturing to the projection screen, "these quarterly numbers are unacceptable. We need fresh ideas, innovation, something that actually moves the needle." Dahlia bit her lip. She had spent weeks developing a campaign that could do exactly that. But proposing it meant drawing Westbrook's infamous scrutiny. As the newest marketing strategist at Westbrook Innovations, she'd already witnessed his brutal takedowns of ideas he deemed mediocre. 3 people had quit in the 6 months she'd been there. "I have something," she said before she could stop herself. 20 heads turned toward her simultaneously. Julian's eyebrow arched. "Ms. Novak, isn't it?" The strategist Harrison poached from Bennett Media. "Yes," she said, rising from her seat. "I've developed a campaign centered around sustainable tech futures. It targets exactly the demographic we're losing to competitors." Julian leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Proceed." For 15 minutes, Dahlia outlined her vision with growing confidence. Her research was thorough, her mock-ups polished, and the strategy sound. When she finished, the room remained silent, all eyes darting between her and the CEO. Julian steepled his fingers. "It's derivative." "Excuse me?" Dahlia blinked. "Your campaign. It's been done before, just dressed up in prettier packaging." His tone was dismissive, almost bored. "We need originality, not recycled concepts from fashion magazines." Heat crawled up Dahlia's neck. "With all due respect, Mr. Westbrook, there's nothing derivative about connecting environmental consciousness with cutting-edge technology. The data supports whatever narrative you want it to," he cut in. "That's marketing 101, Ms. Novak. I expected more from someone with your supposed credentials." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dahlia's colleagues suddenly found their notepads fascinating. "My credentials are quite real," Dahlia said quietly, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "Unlike your reputation for fostering innovation, apparently," someone gasped. Julian's eyes narrowed dangerously. "If innovation means implementing half-baked ideas because they come packaged with pretty infographics, then perhaps my reputation is indeed undeserved." Dahlia gathered her materials with trembling hands. "Then I won't waste any more of your valuable time." That evening, Dahlia typed her resignation letter with a mixture of relief and regret. 2 years ago, landing a position at Westbrook Innovations had felt like her big break. Now it felt like escaping prison. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Zoe. "Takeout and wine emergency?" "Definitely," Dahlia replied. "Just sent my resignation." 20 minutes later, she was recounting the disaster to Zoe in their small apartment. "You actually said that to Julian Westbrook?" "To his face?" Zoe's eyes widened over her glass of Merlot. "He humiliated me in front of the entire marketing department," Dahlia said, stabbing at her pad thai. "Called my work derivative. 6 weeks of research and concept development dismissed in seconds. Still, that man could buy and sell this entire building without blinking. People don't talk back to him." "Maybe they should," Dahlia muttered. "His ego is out of control. Being rich doesn't make him right." Over the next week, Dahlia threw herself into job hunting. Her experience at Westbrook looked good on paper, but the marketing community was small and word traveled fast. 3 promising interviews ended with uncomfortable questions about her creative differences with Julian Westbrook. On her last day, Dahlia cleared out her desk, ignoring the pitying glances from coworkers. She was placing her small plant into a cardboard box when a shadow fell across her desk. "Going somewhere, Ms. Novak?" She looked up into Julian's impassive face. Up close, she noticed the faint shadows under his eyes, the slight furrow between his brows. "My resignation was accepted 3 days ago, Mr. Westbrook." "Yes, by HR, not by me." Dahlia laughed incredulously. "I wasn't aware I needed your personal stamp of approval to quit." "You don't," he said, his voice oddly quiet. "But I'd like you to reconsider." She dropped the plant into the box with a thud. "Why? So you can publicly eviscerate more of my derivative ideas?" Something flickered across his face, regret perhaps. But Dahlia was done trying to decipher Julian Westbrook. "Goodbye, Mr. Westbrook. I wish you and your company continued success." As the elevator doors closed on Julian's uncharacteristically speechless expression, Dahlia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever game he was playing, she wanted no part of it. She was ready for a fresh start, somewhere her ideas would be valued even if the paycheck was smaller. She stepped into the bright spring sunshine, not noticing the way Julian watched her from the lobby window, his expression troubled for the first time in years. Unexpected pursuit. 3 weeks after walking out of Westbrook Innovations, Dahlia settled into her new role at Horizon Creative, a boutique marketing firm with a staff of 15 and an office that could fit inside Julian Westbrook's private bathroom. The pay was significantly less, but the creative freedom made up for it. Her boss, Tasha Patel, actually listened when she spoke. "This campaign concept for the eco-friendly clothing line is brilliant," Tasha said, flipping through Dahlia's presentation. "The storytelling approach really elevates their mission." Dahlia smiled, savoring the unfamiliar feeling of professional validation. "Thanks. I think focusing on the artisans behind each piece gives the brand authenticity that their target audience will connect with." After the meeting, Dahlia was updating the presentation when her phone lit up with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but a nagging curiosity made her answer. "Dahlia Novak speaking?" "Ms. Novak, I hope I'm not interrupting." The deep voice sent an immediate surge of adrenaline through her system. 3 weeks hadn't been enough to forget Julian Westbrook's distinctive tone. "Mr. Westbrook, this is unexpected." She straightened in her chair, grateful he couldn't see her flustered expression. "I'd like to meet with you. Discuss a proposition." Dahlia almost laughed. "I'm afraid I'm quite happy in my new position. I'm not offering your old job back." There was a pause. "This is something different. Dinner, perhaps? Tomorrow at Lumine?" Lumine was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, with a 6-month waiting list. Of course, Julian Westbrook could secure a table on a whim. "Why would I have dinner with you?" Dahlia asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Another pause. "Because you're curious, and because I'm asking nicely." Against her better judgment, Dahlia agreed. Curiosity had always been her weakness. The following evening, she found herself seated across from Julian in Lumine's elegant dining room, feeling distinctly out of place in her best dress. A simple navy number that probably cost less than the wine Julian had ordered without glancing at the price. "You seem uncomfortable," Julian observed, studying her over the rim of his glass. "I'm having dinner with a man who publicly humiliated me less than a month ago," Dahlia replied. "I'd say discomfort is appropriate." Julian set down his glass. "About that, I was unnecessarily harsh in my assessment of your campaign." Dahlia blinked. Was Julian Westbrook actually apologizing? "In fact," he continued, "after you left, I had the team look more closely at your research. Your insights about the eco-conscious demographic were spot on." "Is that why I'm here? So you can tell me I was right after all?" Dahlia kept her voice level, though her pulse quickened. "I'm here to make you an offer." Julian leaned forward, his usual confidence tempered with something new, a hint of humility. "I want you to lead a special project. Not as an employee, but as an independent consultant partnering directly with me." Dahlia studied his face, searching for the catch. "What kind of project?" "A complete overhaul of our brand positioning, centered around sustainable innovation, your specialty. Full creative control, substantial budget, and a consulting fee that would dwarf your current salary." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, giving Dahlia a moment to compose herself. The offer was professionally tempting but personally terrifying. Working directly with Julian would mean constant proximity to the man who had starred in both her work nightmares and, if she was honest, some rather confusing dreams of a different nature. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You have an entire marketing department." Julian's gaze was direct, unsettling. "Because you're the only person who's ever stood up to me in a boardroom. You see things differently, and—" He hesitated. "I respect that more than I initially let on." Throughout dinner, Julian outlined the project with uncharacteristic animation. Dahlia found herself responding to his enthusiasm despite her reservations. The Julian across the table was different from the cold executive she remembered, still intense and demanding, but also engaged, even charming when he wasn't dismissing everyone's ideas. "I'll need time to consider," she said as they waited for the valet to bring Julian's car. "Of course," he handed her a sleek folder. "All the details are here. Take the weekend." As he drove her home in his ridiculously expensive car, Dahlia found herself stealing glances at his profile. In the soft lighting, the sharp edges of his face seemed softer, almost approachable. "Why did you really track me down, Julian?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, his first name feeling strange on her lips. He was quiet so long she thought he might not answer. When he pulled up to her apartment building, he turned to face her fully. "Because when you walked out, you took something with you." His voice was low, almost vulnerable. "A perspective I didn't know I needed." Their eyes locked, and for a breathless moment, Dahlia thought he might lean in closer. Instead, he reached past her to open her door. "Call me when you decide," he said, his professional mask sliding back into place. Over the weekend, Dahlia pored over Julian's proposal, torn between opportunity and self-preservation. Zoe found her Sunday morning still deliberating at their kitchen table. "Just take the job," Zoe said, pouring coffee. "You can't stop talking about his offer, or him." "It's complicated," Dahlia protested. "He's complicated. Complicated is interesting. And the money isn't bad either." Monday morning, Dahlia walked into Tasha's office with mixed emotions. "I've been offered a consulting opportunity," she explained. "It's short-term but significant." Tasha smiled knowingly. "Westbrook came after you, didn't he?" "I wondered how long it would take." "You're not upset?" "Dahlia, when someone like Julian Westbrook admits he made a mistake, that's rare enough to be noteworthy. Take the opportunity and we'll keep your desk warm." That afternoon, Dahlia called Julian. "I'll take the project," she said without preamble. "But I have conditions. I need full creative freedom, and I won't be dismissed or belittled." "Agreed," Julian replied immediately. "When can you start?" 2 days later, Dahlia found herself in a private office at Westbrook Innovations, larger than her entire apartment. Julian had arranged for a team of 4 to support her, all looking slightly terrified when he introduced her as the consultant who will be leading our most important rebranding effort to date. As weeks passed, Dahlia discovered working with Julian directly was intense but oddly exhilarating. His mind was razor sharp, and when he wasn't shutting ideas down, his insights were genuinely valuable. More surprising was how he sought her opinion, actually listening when she spoke. Late one evening, they were alone in the conference room, takeout containers pushed aside as they debated campaign messaging. "The problem with innovation for a better tomorrow is that it's forgettable," Dahlia argued. "Everyone claims to innovate for the future." Julian ran a hand through his hair, a casual gesture that humanized him. "What's your alternative?" "Building the impossible today." Dahlia leaned forward. "It's confident, slightly audacious like you, but focused on present action rather than vague promises." Julian stared at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Like me?" Dahlia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Well, Westbrook Innovations reflects its founder, doesn't it? Bold, uncompromising, occasionally infuriating." A smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Infuriating?" I said occasionally. They both laughed, the tension between them shifting into something warmer, more dangerous. Dahlia found herself noticing details, how his eyes crinkled when he actually smiled, the way he absently touched the back of her chair when leaning over to look at her screen, how his usual cologne mingled with coffee and mint when he worked late. She was falling for Julian Westbrook, the last man she should be attracted to. And from the lingering glances and unnecessary touches, she suspected the feeling might be mutual. But as their project neared completion, Dahlia wondered what would happen next. Was this connection real or simply the product of creative collaboration? And could two people with such different approaches to life find common ground beyond a temporary business partnership? Walls crumbling, the Westbrook Innovations annual showcase was 6 days away, and Dahlia's rebranding campaign would be the centerpiece. For the past 4 months, she had poured every ounce of her creativity and passion into this project, working alongside Julian until she barely remembered why she'd once despised him. "You should be there," Julian said, leaning against her office doorway one evening. The building was nearly empty, most employees having left hours ago. Dahlia looked up from her laptop. "At the showcase? I assumed I would be." "The presentation?" "No," he interrupted, stepping into her office. "On stage with me." This is your vision as much as mine. She stared at him, caught off guard. That's not typical for a consultant. Julian moved closer, perching on the edge of her desk. Nothing about our arrangement has been typical, Dahlia. The way he said her name sent a familiar warmth through her chest. Over these months, something had shifted between them. Professional respect evolving into personal connection. Arguments transforming into the kind of passionate debates that left them both energized rather than angry. I'd be honored, she finally replied. Though I should warn you, public speaking isn't my forte. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in the way she'd come to treasure. You'll be magnificent. You always are. The compliment hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Julian's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before he straightened, clearing his throat. We should celebrate. The campaign is essentially complete. He checked his watch. Have dinner with me. Not for work, just dinner. Dahlia's heart skipped. Like a date? Exactly like a date. His confidence faltered slightly. Unless I've misread things. You haven't, she said softly. Dinner at Julian's penthouse was nothing like their first meal at Lumine. Instead of the formal, guarded conversation of before, they talked freely. About childhood dreams, favorite books, embarrassing college stories. Julian was surprisingly funny when relaxed, his dry humor making Dahlia laugh until her sides hurt. I never thought I'd see this side of you, she admitted as they stood on his balcony afterward. The city lights spread below them like stars. Julian leaned against the railing. I don't show it often. Being vulnerable isn't compatible with running a company like mine. Isn't it lonely, always maintaining that perfect facade? His eyes met hers, more open than she'd ever seen them. Yes, until recently. When he kissed her, it felt inevitable, like the resolution of a tension that had been building since that first heated argument in the conference room. His hands cradled her face with surprising gentleness, contrasting with the intensity of his kiss. The next morning, Dahlia woke in Julian's bed, momentarily disoriented by the floor-to-ceiling windows and silk sheets. Julian was already up, typing on his laptop at a desk nearby, dressed in casual clothes she'd never seen him wear. Morning, he said, noticing her stirring. Coffee? It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt natural when he handed her a mug and sat beside her on the bed, one hand resting on her knee as they talked about the day ahead. But their bubble of contentment shattered 3 hours later, when Julian burst into her office, face tight with barely controlled fury. We have a problem, he said, closing the door firmly behind him. Someone leaked our campaign to Vitara Systems. Dahlia's stomach dropped. Vitara was Westbrook's biggest competitor, known for ruthlessly capitalizing on others' innovations. How bad? They're launching a suspiciously similar campaign tomorrow, 3 days before our showcase. Julian paced the small space. They've stolen our concept, our messaging, everything we've worked on for months. How could they have gotten it? Dahlia pulled up the secure server where their materials were stored. Only the core team had access. Julian's expression darkened. Someone betrayed us, and I intend to find out who. Over the next 24 hours, Julian was a storm of cold fury. He interrogated team members, ordered security audits, and barely spoke to Dahlia except to demand updates. The warm, vulnerable man from the night before had vanished, replaced by the ruthless CEO she'd first encountered. When he summoned her to his office late the following day, Dahlia steeled herself for more tension. Instead, she found him staring out his window, shoulders slumped in uncharacteristic defeat. We found the leak, he said without turning. Thomas Edwards. Been with the company 7 years, Thomas, but he's been so dedicated to this project. Apparently Vitara offered him twice his salary. Julian's voice was flat. The board is suggesting we postpone the showcase. Salvage what we can and regroup. Dahlia approached cautiously. Julian, look at me. When he turned, the vulnerability in his eyes stunned her. This wasn't just about business, this was personal betrayal. We're not postponing anything, she said firmly. We have 3 days to create something new, something better. Julian shook his head. It's impossible. Building the impossible today, she reminded him. Isn't that what we've been saying? Let's prove it. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then slowly, determination replaced defeat in his expression. 3 days, he repeated. No sleep, just work. And coffee, she added. Lots of coffee. They transformed the conference room into a war room. For 72 hours, they barely left the building. Fueled by determination, and the unspoken understanding that this crisis was testing more than their professional relationship. On the morning of the showcase, exhausted but triumphant, they finalized a campaign that bore little resemblance to the stolen one. This version was bolder, more authentic. It revealed the human side of Westbrook Innovations that Julian had always kept hidden. "This is better than the original," Dahlia admitted as they rehearsed one last time. "More honest," Julian nodded, adjusting his tie. "Like us." The showcase was packed with industry leaders, media, and investors. When Julian and Dahlia took the stage together, the murmurs of surprise at seeing an unknown consultant sharing the spotlight with Julian Westbrook quickly gave way to rapt attention. Their presentation was flawless, their chemistry undeniable as they traded speaking parts with the ease of longtime partners. When they unveiled the new slogan, "Humanity Driving Innovation," accompanied by stories of real people whose lives had been changed by Westbrook technology, the audience response was immediate and enthusiastic. Backstage afterward, surrounded by congratulating team members, Julian pulled Dahlia into a quiet corner. "We did it," he said, eyes bright with an emotion she'd never seen there before. "We did," she agreed, "though I may sleep for a week now. I have a better idea." He took her hands in his. "Come to Bali with me next week. The company jet is already scheduled for my quarterly retreat." Dahlia blinked in surprise. "You're serious?" "Completely." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "Dahlia, these past months working with you, knowing you, have changed me. Changed everything. Your reputation for being an impossible hard-ass might suffer," she teased. He laughed, the sound uninhibited. "Worth it." Later that evening, at the after-party held in Westbrook's expansive lobby, Julian surprised everyone by publicly thanking Dahlia for teaching the teacher and announcing her new position as creative director of a brand new division focused on sustainable innovation. "Trying to keep me around?" she whispered as applause filled the room. "In every way possible," he admitted. As they circulated among guests, Dahlia caught sight of a familiar face, Thomas Edwards, looking uncomfortable as he spoke with representatives from Vitara Systems across the street through the glass facade. "Don't," Julian said, following her gaze. "They've already seen that they got the worst version of what we could create. How can you be so calm about it now?" Dahlia asked. "You were furious 2 days ago." Julian's hand found the small of her back, warm and reassuring. "Because 2 days ago I thought I was losing everything. Today I realized I've gained something far more valuable." 6 months later, Dahlia stood on the balcony of Julian's penthouse, their penthouse now, watching the sun set over the city. Westbrook Innovation stock had reached an all-time high. Their sustainable technology division was revolutionizing the industry, and she had never been happier. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Julian appeared beside her, handing her a glass of wine. "I was just thinking about that first day in the conference room," she replied. "When you called my ideas derivative and I nearly threw my presentation folder at your head." He chuckled, pulling her against him. "One of my better mistakes." "Better mistakes?" He kissed her temple, the kind that lead to the right path eventually. Dahlia turned in his arms. "And this is the right path? The only one that matters now." Julian's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about another venture, a personal one this time." "Another company?" she asked, curious. "No." He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. "A partnership of a different kind. One with no exit clause and no termination date." Dahlia's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring. "Dahlia Novak," Julian said, voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "You walked into my company and challenged everything I thought I knew, about business, about leadership, about myself. You saw through my walls when no one else bothered to look. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. "Yes, although I reserve the right to continue calling out your bad ideas." Julian laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the city lights began to twinkle below them, Dahlia marveled at how differently things had turned out from what she'd expected that day she'd packed her plant into a cardboard box and walked away. Sometimes the ending of one story was just the complicated, messy, beautiful beginning of another. One where the line between opposition and attraction blurred until it disappeared entirely, leaving only love in its place. New Horizons, 6 months into marriage. Julian and Dahlia faced their first real test. Westbrook Innovations received an offer to merge with global tech giant Neurosphere, a deal that would triple their resources but dilute Julian's controlling interest. The old Julian would have rejected it outright. This could help us scale the sustainable tech division faster than we ever imagined, Dahlia argued one night in their home office. Think of the impact we could have. Julian paced, struggling with the prospect of sharing power. My father built this company from nothing. Maintaining control has always been non-negotiable. Sometimes growth requires letting go, Dahlia said gently. You trusted me once when everything was falling apart. Trust me now. After a tense week of deliberation, Julian surprised his board by accepting the merger, with conditions ensuring their sustainable initiatives would receive priority funding. At the signing ceremony, he publicly credited Dahlia with teaching an old-school CEO new tricks. That night, he presented her with a small wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to find an antique compass. "Because you've become my true north," Julian said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Keeping me oriented toward what really matters." As they built their shared vision, a legacy beyond profit margins, they discovered that their strongest asset had always been the balance they created together. His decisive drive complemented by her innovative empathy, forging something neither could have achieved alone, full circle. 2 years later, Dahlia stood nervously in the wings of the Tech Future conference stage. As the newly appointed co-CEO of Westbrook Neurosphere Sustainable Solutions, she was about to deliver her first keynote without Julian at her side. "You've got this," Julian whispered, squeezing her hand. Though still involved in strategic decisions, he had gradually stepped back from daily operations, focusing on their newest project, the Westbrook Foundation, supporting young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. What if they're only here because of the Westbrook name? Dahlia worried. Julian smiled, the expression now coming naturally to him. They're here because you've helped transform how the entire industry thinks about sustainable technology. I'm just the lucky man who had the sense to get out of your way. As her name was announced, Julian pressed a quick kiss to her lips. Show them what building the impossible looks like. Walking onto the stage, Dahlia felt a moment of déjà vu, remembering that first disastrous presentation years ago. How fitting that her journey with Julian had begun, with her voice being silenced and would continue with that same voice amplified to thousands. Innovation isn't just about technology, she began confidently. It's about transformation of ideas, of industries, and sometimes of ourselves. The greatest innovations often begin with someone brave enough to challenge the status quo. In the front row, Julian watched her with undisguised pride, both of them living proof that sometimes the people who challenge us most are exactly the ones we need to become our better selves.